My name is Elise. I'm 42. And I don't really know how to start this without sounding like the worst kind of person. The kind of woman who you shake your head at, who you swear you'd never become. But I guess that's why I'm telling it. Because it didn't happen all at once. I used to feel like a whole woman. Desired. Warm. Part of something. My husband, Daniel, made me laugh in that careless, boyish way even after we married. He used to touch me like he couldn't believe I was real, his hand resting on the small of my back while we made dinner, lips brushing my neck when I passed him in the hallway, long hugs that felt like home. But now, those same hands feel more like obligation than instinct. It's strange, the things you notice first. Not the big arguments or slammed doors, we never really had those. No. It's quieter than that. It's the way his goodnight kiss started missing my mouth. Just barely, but enough that I began to wonder if it was on purpose. It's how we'd lie in bed, my back to him, his hand on my hip, but his fingers limp. Like he was touching me because he remembered he should, not because he wanted to. I started counting the seconds between when I said, "I love you," and when he said it back. Sometimes, he wouldn't at all. Maybe that's why I'm here, because it didn't end in fire. It faded. Like watching the color drain from your favorite shirt after years of washes. You keep wearing it. You tell yourself it still fits. But deep down, you know it isn't the same. We've been married 8 years. I came into his life after his wife passed. My heart still aches for the way he used to talk about her, how she made everything brighter. I was careful not to step on her shadow. I didn't want to replace her. Just be seen, too. It took time for his son, Leo, to open up to me. He was 17 when we met, and I never pushed. I was Elise 4 years. Never stepmom. That word felt too official, too maternal. But things changed after he went away to college. Something softened between us, not inappropriately. Not then. It was just easier. The small talk turned into real conversations. He'd come home for holidays and linger in the kitchen with me, helping with dishes, asking about my work. I liked talking to Leo. He noticed things Daniel didn't anymore. Like when I cut my hair. Or when I switched perfumes. God, that sounds worse out loud than it did in my head. I should say, I didn't stop loving Daniel. I just stopped recognizing the way he loved me. Or maybe he stopped altogether, I don't know. There was this moment a few months ago. I remember it too clearly. We were watching some old movie on the couch, Daniel and I. A Sunday night thing. He fell asleep halfway through, snoring lightly with his hand still on my thigh. I shifted under him, gently, and he didn't even stir. I looked at him. At this man who once made me feel like my skin hummed when he entered a room. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even disappointment. Just this cold, empty stretch of silence between us. That's when it hit me. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped reaching for him. And worse, he hadn't noticed. I went to bed that night feeling like a ghost in my own home. And then Leo came home for spring break. And everything after that. I shouldn't tell you. But I will. Because pretending I'm innocent in this won't help anyone, not you, not me. And I need to say it out loud before it eats me whole. Daniel's a surgeon. The kind that works 16-hour shifts and still somehow manages to mow the lawn on Sunday. People love him. His patients call him a miracle worker. His colleagues say he never loses his cool. But at home? That calm turns into distance. And efficiency becomes detachment. I used to admire how steady he was. The way he could walk into chaos and know exactly what to do. But lately, I feel like one of the emergencies he triages, assess the damage, slap on a bandage, move on. Last Tuesday was our anniversary. 8 years. Not a milestone exactly, but still something. I spent the morning making his favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, burnt around the edges just how he likes them. I wore that silky blouse he once said made me look dangerous in the best way. When he walked into the kitchen, I was hopeful. Nervous, even. He kissed my cheek. "Smells amazing," he mumbled, already scrolling through his phone. "I have a consult at 9, but I'll try to be back early tonight." No happy anniversary. No glance. No recognition. I stared at the food. "Daniel," I said gently. He replied, barely looking up. I didn't want to plead. So I let it go. "Nothing. Be safe." He left with a peck to my forehead. Like I was his sister. Or a secretary. That night, he did come home early. With a bouquet of supermarket roses, and this smile like he knew he'd dropped the ball but thought a gesture would patch it up. I forced a smile. "Thanks," I said, burying my face in them so he wouldn't see the disappointment. We had dinner. I'd cooked from scratch. I even wore a little lipstick. He said it tasted great, and meant it, I think. But he didn't ask about my day. Or my art. Or my recent exhibit downtown. Just chewed in silence, then reached for my hand under the table. His thumb brushed the inside of my palm, slowly. Sensually. A signal. That's always been his way, touch before talk. Sex before closeness. And I used to love that about him. That confidence. That hunger. But now? I pulled my hand away and stood to clear the plates. "Elise," he said, his voice low. "What's going on with you lately?" The question struck me harder than it should have. I wanted to yell, "What's going on with me? I'm dissolving and you haven't noticed." Instead, I just said, "I'm tired." He came up behind me as I rinsed the dishes. Slid his arms around my waist. Kissed my neck. I froze. "Don't," I whispered. He pulled back, confused. "Don't what?" "Touch me like that when you haven't looked at me all day." His brows furrowed, then his shoulders tensed. "Jesus, Elise. I'm trying." "You act like I don't care, because you don't see me," I snapped. There it was. Out loud. He went quiet. Walked to the sink, turned off the water I'd left running. "I work 14-hour days to keep this life together. And you're mad I didn't look at you?" I stared at the suds in the sink. My hands were shaking. "It's not about the flowers. Or dinner. It's, you used to ask how I was. You used to notice when I wasn't okay. Now you touch me like it's a shortcut." He exhaled hard. "So what? You want me to read your mind now?" "No," I said quietly. "I just want you to miss me. Even when I'm standing right in front of you." He didn't answer. Just picked up his keys and walked out to the porch. Probably to call one of his brothers. Or just be somewhere I wasn't. And that was when I knew, he thought we were fine. That going through the motions meant everything was working. But I was starving. Not for sex, but for softness. Curiosity. Presence. And the worst part? I didn't know how to ask for it anymore. A few nights after our anniversary dinner, Daniel tried again. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, his t-shirts, my jeans, a pair of socks I wasn't even sure belonged to us. The TV was playing some late-night cooking show in the background, all background noise and laughter that didn't belong to us. Daniel came in freshly showered, smelling like that woodsy body wash I used to associate with desire. Now, it just reminded me of distance. clean, controlled, unreachable. He smiled and walked up behind me, sliding his arms around my waist. I stiffened. Not noticeably, I don't think, but enough for me to feel it in my shoulders. "You're working too hard," he said softly into my neck. His lips brushed the skin beneath my ear. It used to make me melt. But this time I just stood there, towel in hand, heart in limbo. He turned me gently toward him. I tried to smile. God, I really tried. His hands rested on my hips as he kissed me. Slow. Tender. I knew what it meant. But the kiss felt empty. Like we were imitating a version of us that no longer existed. His tongue nudged its way in, and I let it. Out of habit. Out of guilt. Then his hand slid down and cupped my ass. Lightly, like a suggestion. And I flinched. Not dramatically. Just a slight jerk back. But he felt it. He pulled away and looked at me. "What?" he asked, forehead creased. I blinked, trying to come up with something honest that wouldn't sound cruel. Nothing. I just wasn't expecting that. You used to like it when I touched you like that. I swallowed hard. I know. He stepped back, just a little. Enough to give me space, but not enough to let me breathe. "Elise, what's happening to us?" I wanted to say, "We stopped being us." I wanted to say, "I don't feel safe with you emotionally, and now my body doesn't want to open, either." But instead, I said, "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair. "Is it me? Did I do something?" "Yes. And no. And it's not fair." I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding a dish towel. "I feel like, every time we're close, it turns into sex." He blinked, confused. "We're married." "I thought you wanted that, too." I nodded slowly. "I do. Or I want to want it. But sometimes I just wish you'd sit next to me, touch my hand, ask me how I feel without it being a prelude to something." He sighed, rubbed his face. "I'm not good at all that emotional stuff. You know that." "I know," I said quietly. "But I need it now more than I used to." He didn't answer. He just sat on the opposite corner of the bed, his back to me. And I realized then, we weren't mad at each other. We were confused by each other. I looked down at my hands, nails chipped, palms dry, wedding ring too loose from recent weight loss. I remembered when that ring used to mean something solid. Something binding. Now, it just felt like a reminder. Of everything we weren't saying. Of everything we kept trying to fix with friction and skin. And deep inside, I found myself screaming into the silence, "Why does everything have to turn into sex?" It was supposed to be just dinner. Leo had come home for a long weekend, his last break before graduation. He'd been out most of the day visiting old high school friends, but he'd promised to be back by 7. I made roast chicken, the way he liked, with rosemary potatoes and roasted carrots. Daniel brought home a bottle of wine. Good wine. Expensive. He was trying. I knew that. The three of us sat at the table like a picture-perfect family, if you didn't look too close. Leo was charming as always. He had this easy energy that loosened the stiffness in the room. Daniel even laughed a few times. I laughed, too, but it felt thin. Like something I had to hold up with both hands. At some point, Leo complimented the meal. "You should have been a chef, Elise," he said. "Seriously, it's amazing." I smiled, more warmly than I meant to. "You always say that." Daniel looked up from his plate. "He's just sucking up because he wants dessert." Leo grinned, but I caught it, the way Daniel's eyes narrowed for a moment when he saw me smiling back. A flicker. Then gone. The wine made my skin feel too tight. The room too small. Later, while Leo was clearing the dishes, Daniel reached for my hand across the table. I was thinking we could go away for a weekend next month, he said. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet. He rubbed his thumb over my knuckles. It was gentle. A gesture that, once upon a time, might have meant everything. But now, it just felt like a lie we kept telling. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't smile either. Elise? I looked at him. Really looked. His tired eyes. His hopeful expression. The effort it probably took just to suggest something like this. And something in me broke. What's the point? I said quietly. He blinked. What? I pulled my hand back. A weekend away isn't going to fix this. Leo stepped back into the room, holding the clean plates and a towel. He paused. Daniel glanced over at him, then back at me. Can we not do this right now? He whispered. But it was too late. The words were already spilling out. I'm tired of pretending. Every night feels like we're acting. You touch me, I smile, we go through the motions, and I feel nothing. Elise, and then I feel guilty for feeling nothing, I snapped, louder now. My voice cracked on the last word. Leo quietly set the plates on the counter and left the room. Daniel pushed back from the table. What do you want from me, Elise? I'm trying. Trying what? I asked, half laughing, half crying. To remember I exist? To show up for a dinner and call it effort? His face hardened. You're being dramatic. That word, dramatic, landed like a slap. Right, I whispered. Because God forbid your wife have feelings she can't surgically remove. He stood, shaking his head, and walked out of the room. I heard the door to his office close. Just like that. I was alone. I sat there for a while, staring at the table, trying to piece together what I'd just done. Leo came back in quietly and began loading the dishwasher. I couldn't meet his eyes. I went to our bedroom and shut the door softly behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets with both hands, breathing too fast. What had I expected? Apology? Understanding? A scene out of a movie? All I got was silence. And guilt. And this overwhelming sense that maybe I was too much. Too needy. Too broken. I buried my face in my hands and whispered to the empty room, I don't even know who I'm supposed to be anymore. And for a split second, I thought about Leo. The way he looked at me when I wasn't trying. The way he noticed when I was off. The way he didn't flinch when I unraveled a little. And that thought alone made me feel ashamed. But also seen. 2 weeks passed. Not much was said. The house got quiet in a different way, not just silence, but space. Like everything was padded. Distant. Daniel started coming home later. He stopped asking if I wanted to eat together. And I stopped waiting up. We orbited each other politely. Cordially. Like coworkers who used to be friends. One night, I came home from the gallery to find him asleep on the couch, still in his scrubs, mouth slightly open. There was a plate of takeout next to him and a half-empty glass of wine on the coffee table. I stood there for a long minute, just looking at him. He looked small. Not in stature, but in spirit. The man who always seemed so composed, so clean-cut, now looked like he'd been hollowed out a little. His brow was furrowed even in sleep, and there was a spot on his collar where a bit of sauce had dried. That used to drive him crazy, he'd change immediately. I wondered if he'd noticed it at all. I wanted to touch him. Brush his hair off his forehead. But I didn't. Instead, I turned off the TV, covered him with the throw blanket, and went to bed. alone. In the mornings, he'd make coffee, set my mug on the counter the way he always had, milk first, no sugar, and then head out before I came downstairs. That tiny gesture cut deeper than any fight. Because it meant he still cared. But didn't know how to show it anymore. One Saturday afternoon, I found him in the garage, sitting in the car with the door open, just staring at the dashboard. No music. No keys. Just sitting. I stood by the door, watching. "I used to think I was a good husband," he said suddenly, not looking at me. I didn't answer. "I never cheated. I always came home. I worked hard. I thought that was enough." His voice wasn't angry. Just tired. "I know," I said softly. Finally, he looked at me. Really looked. "Elise, do you still love me?" I wasn't ready for the question. I opened my mouth. Closed it again. My heart slammed hard against my ribs, like it was trying to get out of the conversation. I don't know what I feel anymore," I said honestly. "I miss you. But I don't miss how I feel with you lately." His eyes glistened a little. "I miss us, too." Then he shook his head. "But we're not the same. I don't know how to talk to you without feeling like I'm already doing it wrong." That hit hard. Because he wasn't wrong. "I feel like I need so much," I whispered. "And I hate that. I used to be easier." He didn't correct me. Didn't say you're not too much. Maybe he was tired of trying to convince me. Maybe he didn't believe it either. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed again, the same way I had the night we fought. But this time I didn't cry. I just thought about how much I missed being held, not out of obligation or foreplay, but out of comfort. About the way Daniel used to pull me into him in the middle of the night, half asleep, like his body remembered even when his mind forgot. About how now, when he touched me, it felt like checking a box. And yet, there was still a version of us I could remember, clear as a photograph. A better us. And I didn't know if I wanted to mourn it. Or fight for it. I took a breath and whispered into the quiet, "I don't want to walk away. But I don't know how to stay, either." A week later, Daniel came home early. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and a notebook open in front of me. Not writing, just turning pages, pretending to be busy with something I hadn't started. He looked tired. But calmer. Maybe he'd made peace with something I hadn't. "I think we should talk," he said, setting his keys in the bowl by the door. I nodded. "Okay." We sat down across from each other like strangers gently broaching bad news. Daniel ran his hands through his hair and exhaled. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About how we got here." I swallowed, heart tight. "Me too." "I'm not angry," he said. "But I'm worn out. I don't want to keep hurting you by trying to fix something you're not sure you want." "I want peace," I said, surprising myself. "I want to stop feeling like I'm failing at being in love." His eyes flicked up to mine. "Me too." We sat in silence. Honest silence. The kind that doesn't beg to be filled. "I miss you," I said finally. "But I miss the version of you I felt close to." He nodded slowly. "And I miss the version of me that knew how to reach you." There wasn't bitterness in his voice, just quiet resignation. Like he'd reached the end of a long internal argument. He got up, walked around the table, and stood beside me. For a second, I thought he might kiss me. But instead, he bent down and kissed the top of my head. Soft. Like a goodbye. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight," he said. I didn't stop him. Later, I passed the open door and saw him lying on the narrow twin bed, back turned to the wall. Still, small, and separate. I stood there in the hallway a while, the air between us stretching thinner and thinner. And all I could think was, this is how love fades, not in rage, but in quiet rearrangements of space. There was no slamming door. No screaming match. Just the deep, aching knowledge that we'd already unraveled. Gently. Slowly. And almost kindly. He didn't fall out of love. And I didn't betray him. But something in us had expired, and we both knew it. I went back to our room, my room, now, I guess, and curled under the sheets, staring at the ceiling. The silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like permission. To let go. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe it's because I need to hear myself say it. Out loud. Unfiltered. My name is Elise. I'm 41. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm breathing without bracing. It's strange, I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be in some dramatic way. A betrayal. A lie uncovered. An affair. Something worthy of screaming in a kitchen or crying on the floor. But that's not how it happens for most people, is it? No. Most of the time, love doesn't explode. It evaporates. One day you stop kissing with intent. Then you stop touching without expectation. Then you stop talking altogether, except for groceries and gas bills. And if you're not careful, the silence becomes its own language. One neither of you wants to learn, but both speak fluently. Daniel didn't hurt me. Not in the way people think of hurt. He didn't cheat. He didn't yell. He didn't leave bruises. But I think that's part of why I held on so long. Because I kept telling myself, it could be worse. And that's how women like me get lost, not in the presence of violence, but in the absence of affection. I used to think sex would fix things. Or that maybe if I tried harder to want it, I'd stop feeling like something was broken in me. But what I learned, slowly, painfully, is that desire without emotional safety feels like performance. And performing intimacy is lonelier than not having it at all. I needed more than Daniel knew how to give. And maybe I didn't know how to ask until it was too late. There's a moment I keep going back to, a quiet one. No shouting. No tears. Just the feel of his hand on mine across the table, both of us trying, and both of us knowing, it wasn't enough anymore. There's grief in that. A specific kind. Not mourning a person, but a version of yourself you thought would last. And then, there's Leo. Yes, my stepson. He didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. Nothing happened, not in the way you're thinking. But there was a moment, a single, brief moment, when he looked at me and really saw me. And I realized how long it had been since anyone had. It scared me. Not because it was inappropriate, but because it made me feel alive. Like I still had light inside me. Like maybe I wasn't dead yet. And I hated that it took him to remind me of that. So I stepped back. I redrew the line. And I chose to deal with my emptiness head-on instead of filling it with borrowed attention. That was the beginning of the end with Daniel. Not because I cheated, but because I finally admitted I was starving. And you can't build a life with someone who only offers crumbs when you need a feast. So here I am. Not single. Not married. Not sure what's next. But I'm not scared anymore. Because now I know, love isn't about staying. It's about seeing. And choosing. Every day. And when the choosing stops, when the seeing fades, staying becomes a form of leaving. I used to think endings were failures. But sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk out of a room that no longer hears you. So that's what I did. Not to chase something forbidden. Not to run into someone else's arms. But to come home to myself. 5.